Today we are going to see how to implement the cybersecurity controls. We have seen what are the why the cybersecurity important, what are the risks associated with the cybersecurity. Now we are going to see what actually how to implement those controls within the organization, what needs to be do. To implement cybersecurity in the organization, we do have several procedures like ISO 27701, ISO 27001, that is called as Information Security Management System. So there are various standards which is available. We can call it as a framework. There are various frameworks available which we can implement across the organization to protect the cybersecurity or information security or the privacy related threats. We have discussed ISO is the one of the major standards. There are various standards published by the ISO which are going to help organization to fight against cybersecurity, information security, or the privacy related threats. The first standard in this is ISO 27001. ISO 27001 is the information security management system standards that can be implemented across the organization. So there are various standards apart from ISO in ISO 27000 family. The first standard is your ISO 27002. ISO 27002 have all the controls. What are the controls needs to be implemented? All the controls are listed in ISO 27002. Another standard is available. It's called as ISO 27005. That is for identification of the risk. Risk identification and risk treatment is a part of this thing, ISO 27005 standard. So these are the two standards for the information security management system. Another standard is ISO 27701, that is called as privacy information management. This standards are being used to implement privacy related controls within the organization. The same controls as listed in the GDPR. Various countries do have their own privacy related frameworks. So we need to comply if we are doing businesses outside our country. There are various regulations which needs to be followed by the organization. Those regulations are covered in ISO 27701. Another standard is the BCMS, that is called as Business Continuity Management System. Business Continuity Management System is a standard to you can say to manage the business continuity or the service continuity. You can say how to plan the business continuity in case of various disaster situation, or if in the various natural disaster, also technological failure, also there are various kinds of failures are there. So how to manage your business in that scenario, so that are covered under the BCMS part. One of the standard is the ISO 27032. This standard is used for the cybersecurity management. Cybersecurity related things are being covered in that. Apart from these ISO standards, there are various standards like PCI DSS. PCI DSS are used for the credit card companies, or those companies which are having payment gateway. They are having payment gateway. They are collecting the payment through the payment gateway. So this standard is applicable. PCI DSS is applicable to those organizations. In the same way, there are various standards like SOC. SOC is also one standard which is published by the governed by the AICPA. Mostly it's applicable in America itself, North America. But when we are going to do business in the North America, then we need to be complied with the SOC as per their vendor assessment program. Organization needs to be complied with SOC requirement also. SOC 2, there are three standards: SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. Basically, we need to comply with SOC 2 standard. For the IT, SOC 2 talks about the IT related controls. In the same way, the major framework, the most important framework is your NIST Cybersecurity Framework. NIST Cybersecurity Framework is a very, you can say, recognized framework across the globe, which is developed by National Institute of Standards and Technology. It is going to help private sectors to implement cybersecurity related programs within the organization. So there are numerous of standards which are applicable. We are going to follow each and every standard. You can say consolidately, we called it as a GRC, governance, risk and compliance framework. These are all the frameworks called as a GRC framework, governance, risk and compliance framework. So these are the frameworks which needs to be implemented across the organization. No. So the questions comes here, how we are going to secure our information. What are the things we are need to be implemented across the organization? What would be our approach? Uh, like we have seen NIST framework. NIST frameworks talk about your recover, identify, protect, detect, and respond. There are 5 phases of your NIST framework: recover, identify, protect, detect, and respond. We need to build up proper logical security, physical security, and organizational uh, security, or you can say procedural security. These are the, you can say, levels of security controls. Labels are there which needs to be implemented across the organization to protect the thing, to protect information security, cyber security, and all the controls. We have seen there are various numbers of cyber security related frameworks are available. Collectively, we called it as a governance, risk, and compliance framework. So we will go each by each framework, what actually these frameworks are, how to implement these frameworks within the organization. We'll go one by one and we'll see. The agenda of this cybersecurity frameworks are: which security framework is right for your organization, which security framework we need to implement uh, across the organization, how we need to implement this security frameworks, tips, tricks, and lesson learned from the auditor and implementer perspectives we are going to see. The first things what we need to understand, what actually the security frameworks are. Security frameworks are a defined, documented policies and procedures that are governed to implement organization security, you can say, frameworks. So these are the things are documented policies and procedures. They are set of documented policies and processes. The security frameworks are the set of documented policies and the procedure. This is the company's roadmap of the blueprint for the cybersecurity. What would be the roadmap? What would be the blueprint? These are the covered under this framework. Company is automatically compliant by having this framework. You need to implement this framework, and your organization need to be audited. So first we need to think, we need to implement the standards, then your organization should be audited by a third party, then only you will be compliant with the requirement. Why do we need the security framework? We need security framework to follow the best practices, to adhere the best practices, what is available across the market. So we need to consider the industry best practices. This helps to these frameworks help organization related to various compliance requirement. So when the moment you are going to implement these frameworks, you will be supposed to compliance with various organizational requirements. The companies can communicate with the partners, because a company can do have various partners, so you can communicate in the same language. That's why these frameworks are very important. uh, this help organization to assess their own security, the security levels. You can able to assess their own security level by having these frameworks. Now we need to see which security frameworks is right for your organization. There are various security frameworks are available. According to our business models, we need to have the various security frameworks to be implemented in our organization. We need to identify which frameworks is applicable for your organization. Collectively, these frameworks, we called it as a governance, risk, and compliance framework. In the governance framework, in the governance, the statutory regulatory requirements are there, various standards are available, our organizational policies and procedures would be there, and the related control would be implemented. This would be our governance model. When talking about the risk, in the risk, first we need to identify the risk, we need to cure the risk, you need to assess the risk, you need to have proper access control within the organization. This would be the overall risk exercise what we need to conduct in the organization. When we are talking about the compliance function, when you are going for the compliance one, your organization would, how you can say your organization is compliant. There should by having certain internal audits, your customer audit, your external audits and all, you can say your organization is compliant with certain regulations, certain requirement. This is the overall brief related to the governance, risk, and compliance framework. The security framework, we have seen earlier also, there are various kinds of security framework like COBIT, your ISO 27001 series is there, your NIST Cybersecurity Framework is there, cybersecurity frameworks are there, your critical security controls are there, PCI DSS and HIT trust. These are the various things are there. Now let's go one by one. We'll try to have a glimpses of these frameworks, what actually these frameworks say, how to implement these frameworks in the organization. Your control of this COBIT stand for Control Objective for Information and Related Technology. The full form of COBIT is your Control Objectives for Information and Related Technology. This standard is developed by ISACA. Currently, we do have COVID-5. COVID-5 have 5 phases. The first thing is meeting stakeholder needs. The second control is you're covering the enterprises end to end. Applying a single integrated framework is your third control. Fourth is your enable a holistic approach. The fifth is the separating governance from the management. Management should not be work as a governance. Governance should be separate from the management. So these are the things, these are the controls needs to be implemented in the COVID model. Now let's talk about ISO 27001 and ISO 27002 related controls. ISO, you know, ISO stand for International Organization for Standardization. So there are various standards we have seen in the ISO also. ISO 27001 standard, ISO 27002 standard. ISO standard is called as the grandfather of all other standards because it contains all the controls which needs to be implemented to fight against cyber related threat, information security related threats and all. This standards has been developed to meet the needs of the international or the global organization. ISO standard is used to follow the risk-based approach. First, you need to identify your risk. After that, you need to go and work upon various controls. This is the ISO standards. Now, another standard is your AICPA, Cybersecurity Risk Management Framework. In the Cybersecurity Risk Management Framework, various controls are there, like control related to your management description, management association, practitioner opinion. So all these controls are there. The most important framework in the cybersecurity field is your NIST framework. NIST framework is recognized as a security best practice framework. In this NIST framework, there are 5 phases of NIST framework. The first phase is start for the identify. Another phase is the protect, then detect, respond, and recover. This is the full 4 phases of the NIST framework. In the first phase of the identify, the risk management is there, governance is there, asset management is there. Asset management, we need to have proper asset related security. Risk management, you need to have proper risk related control. We'll go in details what actually these things are there. In the protect control, as the name name says it is a protect. In the protect, we need to protect. Once we have identified the risk, now we need to go to protect. The protect will protect our assets by having various control like access controls. So we need to impart the training to the users, your maintenance, your data security. These are the things would be there. The first thing in identify phase, we have identified the risk. You need to correlate it. We have identified the risk. Based upon the risk, we have a proper controls. We have put at various controls to protect those risks. Now, another thing is the detect. In the detect phase, we are going to uh, uh, detect the risk. We are going to detect the various risks like your cyber security related threat, your penetration related threats and all. In the detect phase, we are going to detect the things. Now identify, protect, and detect is over. In the respond phase, now we do have all three things. In the response phase, after having certain controls also, something goes wrong. Some incident may happen. We cannot say our system is 100% secure, so anyone cannot penetrate in our system. This is not true any way, because vulnerabilities would be there. Vulnerabilities are keep identified. These are the continuous process. Earlier, no one had any idea related to log4j related vulnerability, which has been identified very recently. But it was identified recently. Now the companies have started putting the controls and all on the log4j related vulnerability. At the response phase, we are going to react over the incidents. What are the incident would be there? Now, in the recover phase, we would have proper recovery planning when incident would be there, how we are going to recover with those incidents, what are the controls we need to have. These are the things. These are the things we need to have in the recover phase. So there are 5 phases of NIST framework. Our training will also be around the NIST framework and ISO framework, because these are the globally recognized framework for the cybersecurity things. Now, we have seen various framework. Now we are going to see how to implement a security framework within our organization. The first thing is that according to the Center of Information Security, what are the things we need to do? We need to have a proper inventory of authorized and unauthorized devices. First thing we need to find out the assets. What are the assets we do have in our organization? The first thing is that we need to have proper inventory. We need to identify our assets, what assets we do have. In the same way, your devices related inventory we need to do. Then we need to go to the software inventory. What are the softwares we are using across the organization? What are the applications we are using across the organization? We need to have proper inventory of authorized or unauthorized softwares. Now, in the same way, we need to secure configuration of the hardware, software, and mobile devices. Continuous vulnerability assessment. We need to have a continuous vulnerability assessment and all. Controlled use of administrative privileges. We need to have proper control over the administrative privileges which we have given to the user. For doing the inventory of authorized and unauthorized devices, what we need to do, we need to build an inventory management system in the organization. We can deploy network level authentication. We can use maintain asset inventory. What are the inventory we do have in the network side? So these are the things what we can have to find out the inventory of hardware. In the same way, when we are talking about the inventory of hardware, what are the authorized software we do have? What are the versions of the software? Software inventory tools we need to have, which are the virtual machines what we are using. These are the things we are going to have in our inventory list. Secure configuration of hardware and software. We need to have proper secure configuration of operating system and software what we have in the organization. We need to establish proper secure configuration. We need to follow this configuration management, strict configuration management, and we need to perform all the relate administrative of the servers and all. These are the things we are going to have in the vulnerability management. In the vulnerability management, what we need to do, we need to assess the vulnerability within the system, perform vulnerability scanning, uh, perform threat intelligence monitoring, what is our threats are there, monitor the logs, what has been logged in the various scanning activity. That these are the things we are going to do in the vulnerability management. Controlled use of administrative privilege. In the administrative play, those persons who are giving the administrative rights, those rights should be monitored. Those rights should be so first thing is the authorization. Someone should authorize to use these things. After having the authorization should be there, then the log should be monitored on the regular interval of time. So this is the overall cybersecurity related framework, what needs to be implemented across the organization, uh, implemented across the organization to have a proper controls to fight against the cybersecurity related, information security related threats, and the threats related to the information security, cybersecurity, and the privacy related threats. That's all from the framework.